Okay. In this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about the one-point perspective imaginary room that you're going to be designing. This is something where you demonstrate your understanding of perspective by drawing a room in one-point perspective that's completely imaginary and made up by you. Okay, so what I want you to do first is, let's imagine this is your pad. We're going to start by drawing a room that seems to be going back in space. So if you look at this image, we have a rectangle at the middle of the picture. We have a ceiling, we have a floor, and we have two walls on either side. Okay, so what I want you to do is you're going to be drawing a rectangle in your pad. Now don't make it too big, don't make it too small. Make it roughly about this size. Because what this represents, if we look at it, is a room in one-point perspective. So these are all the parallel lines. So the floor is parallel to the ceiling. So they're going to meet at the same point. And these lines, the two floor lines, are parallel to each other. So they'll meet at the same point. And the ceiling lines are parallel to each other. So hopefully you've seen the previous video on perspective already before you're viewing this. But everything comes to a point that's a vanishing point in your picture. Now for you, you can put your vanishing point anywhere. So the first thing I want you to do is draw this rectangle and then take this point and stick it anywhere in that rectangle. Now if you put it in the middle, then everything's going to be fairly equal. If you put it to the side, you'll notice that, let's say you put it over here to the side, this wall is going to get really big because it's like if you were next to that wall, it's going to appear bigger and this one's going to appear smaller. Likewise, if you put it up high, it'll be like you are on a ladder and the ceiling is going to be really big and the floor small. So it doesn't matter where you put it, but I'm just going to talk you through the idea of making a room in one-point perspective, and then you take it from there. You put the vanishing point where you want, but the principles will all be the same. So we start with this. We stick a vanishing point in the middle. You then draw to the corners of the wall, and then you extend those lines. Okay, so you can have these lines in the drawing, but keep them very light and keep them very thin. Where they meet is the eye level. So this is going to be the height of the person viewing the room. So if you're putting a window in the room, if you put it like this, obviously you've made a mistake because the top of the window and the bottom of the window, remember, are parallel to the floor and the ceiling, which means they have to go where? They have to go to this point. So what you have to do is either from the front of the window you have to go up and extend it, or you could go to the back of the window and make it smaller. But let's say I went to the front of the window. So that goes up, that goes down. So our window really is going to look like this. All right? Because that tells us that this line and this line are parallel, and this line and this line are parallel. But the window still looks a bit funny because I haven't changed this line. It's the same distance from here to here. But when you look at something in perspective, it gets smaller as it goes further away from you. So this section must be smaller than this section. So an easy trick to sort of solve that problem is to diagram an X in this window, and that will tell you where the middle of that shape is. So if we do that, we see that the middle is not here, the middle is really back here. All right. So that's the window drawn in perspective. Okay, everybody with me? Let's say we wanted to draw a door. Again, you couldn't do this. Why? Because the top of the door is parallel to the ceiling. So we have to have a line that goes to the vanishing point. This time, instead of doing at this end of the door, which is closest to the vanishing point, which I did for the window, I'm going to put it at the back of the door. It just makes my door look a little bit smaller, and so I get that kind of effect. All right? Let's say I don't want a door, I want a cutout, meaning this is like a hallway, it goes back. What I would do is where that vertical line hits the diagonal, I then make a horizontal line. So that's an important part of this drawing. You're really only going to have three lines. You're going to have vertical or horizontal or diagonal. And if they're diagonal, they're always going to the vanishing point. So if you keep that in mind, then if you're stuck as to how to draw a particular line, it'll unstuck you. So you make horizontal lines here and here because this is parallel to the back wall. And it'll look something like this. And then you want to obviously color them in. And then you want to get rid of this thing here unless you want to pretend that these are two different colors or two different materials. All right. So now we get the feeling that we can walk through here and we go into another room. Let's say, for example, we didn't want to make this a hallway. We wanted to make it a doorway that had some kind of thickness. What you would do is you would establish, well, how thick do you want this piece to be? Do you want it to be really thick, really thin, or about here? Let's say we chose here. What you would do is where that hits the horizontal here, that becomes the new diagonal, and you put your ruler down and you draw that out. Because remember, this line, which is the thickness of the top of the door, is parallel to this line. So going back to our principle from the first lecture, they have to go to the same vanishing point. All right, so that's going to be the thickness of our door. I want to get rid of this here. So I get rid of that. Now I can see into this space. What do I see? Well, I'm not going to see infinity. I'm going to see another back wall. And if it's the same distance from me, I literally continue this line all the way through the drawing. Like that. Okay, so now we have a room with a door with a certain thickness. It's cut out, and we can see into the next room. So you can see how incredibly logical all of this is. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense in terms of if they're parallel, they go back here. If they're not, they're either vertical or they are completely horizontal. Okay, so if you keep those things in mind, you'll be okay. Let's say I want to put a rug, a rectangular rug on the floor. Again, like the window and the door, I can't do this because the sides of the rug are parallel to the sides of the room. So obviously, they need to go back at an angle, and my rug really is going to look like this. Now, these two are parallel, hence they're going to be horizontal. All right, but these two are parallel to each other, and I already have something else in the painting or the drawing that's parallel, so I have to go to the same vanishing point. Now let's say I didn't want to have this be a rug. I want a hole in the floor that's this shape. Well, that's easy. All I have to do is drop down. Okay, just drop a couple of lines down from the edges. So there is a degree of kind of imagining in your head what it is you're trying to get. All right, what it is you want. And then I'd have to connect them. And then the bottom of those, the bottom I'm going to have here is parallel to what? It's parallel to this line. And so obviously it needs to go back here. And so that's what I'm going to get. All right, so you can see how I'm building this space. So everything you put in this space just has to follow these rules. So you can put beds, you can put bookcases, you can put windows, doors, this can be a recessed area. Put your bed down here, or maybe you want to turn this into a swimming pool. Maybe you want to drop a light hanging up here. Maybe you want a lanai window. Have fun with this. Just make it up. Just play with it. Put lots of stuff in it. As long as you remember that there's three basic lines: vertical, horizontal, or they go here, you should be okay. If you're feeling adventurous and you want to experiment with curves, go for it. But if you're not feeling that experimental, don't worry about it. Just kind of stick with these basic objects right now. So again, you can put your vanishing point high, you can put it to the right, you can put it to the left, you can put it low. You don't have to put it in the middle. Here's another example. The vanishing point's kind of low and to the side here. And because it's to the side, again, notice how big this wall is compared to this wall. And then here we have a cutout with a hallway. Here's a room. I've taken off the internet, just kind of building a cube in here and a bookcase in here. The best way to do that is to draw the side closest to you, and that's going to be pure verticals and horizontals. Pure verticals and horizontals. Then you go back, and where they hit the back wall is where you'd come up. So it's pretty logical. When a line intersects with another line, that's usually where you end the line. So this is a drawing that I'm just going to show you the progression that the artist on this internet site has built. Okay, so there's that kind of structure there. Another structure, they put a bed in here, so they just draw a rectangle. They decide how far out it wants to be, and then the corners of the rectangle go back. If you want a desk, if you want a chair, if you want books, if you want a computer, everything just follows these rules. If you want to know the middle of this object, right? We talked about this, exit, there's the middle, and that's going to give you the line for the cabinet. You put handles and the back wall. Okay, so have fun with this exercise. And here are just a few more things I found on the internet. Complicated room, but notice everything really goes back to one point somewhere here. Here there's some ellipses. Not a very good ellipse. Try to have them more circular, curved edges. Even the lights, the outside of the light will follow a line. This outside of the light will follow a line, and they will all meet at the exact same point. Here's a diagram showing again. Be careful of this. Notice these lines. This is angled. This is a very common mistake. When people start drawing away from the vanishing point, they start to angle. So try not to angle. Again, you can see here, your verticals all need to be parallel to the side of your paper. Don't angle them in. Keep them perfectly straight up and down. And another example, and a few more examples. And here you can see, can you see that this is angled? It needs to be perfectly straight up and down. This is our guide. Really, this is our guide, the edge of the paper, and you can see how the couch goes back. All right, so try not to fall into that trap. Keep all your verticals vertical. Another example. Now, these imaginary rooms, you can get crazy. They can be illogical. You have holes in walls and things falling through the ceiling. I don't care. Just have fun with it. You can also shade if you want, although I would advise against it, because unless you're consistent with the shading, it doesn't really work properly. And by consistent, I mean consistent with a light source. So it's up to you. You can play around with it. You can get silly, put some people in it if you want. But again, if you analyze this image, there is one point that everything comes to, and that point is right there. Everything goes to that point. All right, so if the line is going away from you, that's where it's going. Another example, you can see the vanishing point here. And then finally, we get a room that's getting pretty complicated. We have a wall in the back there and a few more pieces of information. All right, so have fun with this. Enjoy it. Keep all your lines visible, but keep your parallel lines light, and then darken your main lines for the picture.